Here's the original early morning rant.
Today I want to talk to you about unfalsifiable statements in N.P.D abuse and the new cage grifter movement. If you take a close look at what occurs in the conversation when a narcissist, a psychopath, a narcissistic psychopath, borderline, many other types of mentally ill people, including the vast majority of the new cage movement, what you're going to find is a large basis of all these grifts are unfalsifiable statements. For example, I'm channeling Bashar. For example, the Archon made me do it. There's no way that you can prove what's happening in the second bardo to a person who exists in 3D. So if the person listening is not a psychic, they have no way of disproving it. And if you're talking to a narcissist psychopath, we're going to use a non-falsifiable statement, an unfalsifiable statement to end the argument, and the grifter is going to use it to control you because you have no reference to prove these statements to be accurate or wrong. And a lot of grifters use a very self-confident tone of voice or neuro-linguistic programming and other mind control techniques to convince you and seem totally self-confident. But if you tear it apart, if you really look at what happens in a conversation with a narcissist or a new cage grifter, you find that they silenced you, or they manipulated you, and they controlled you with these non-falsifiable statements. And this is a basis for so many cons, so many of these supposedly honest statements. And since you can't disprove them, you don't even argue. Since this person's making a lot of money off convincing hundreds of people these things are real, nobody can stop them. So maybe we need to use the scientific method on the new cagers. But for example, the existence of the archons, from my perspective, although I could, from my emotional feeling, that I could give you examples and say this proves they exist, this proves they exist, this proves they exist.
No!
The whole thing is that
Get back to work!
the dark side are masters of hiding and masters of manipulation and obfuscation and convincing you that they're filthy cons are real. And they're always using non-falsifiable statements. Unfalsifiable statements to prove the unprovable. Like, God is going to make you burn in hell forever if we don't do what we say. Well, it's pretty easy to point out that your spirit or essence is not physical, so it cannot burn. However, when you see the amount of torturing and suffering that's involved with obedience to these cruel false self-gods. It's easy to perceive that having your memories wiped and your spirit or your essence recycled back into these flesh suits over and over and over again is a burning, psychological burning pit of hell. But that's here on the earth. So if a Gnostic or Sandra Brown tells you this is a hell, you know, it may not be as horrific as the hell you heard about in Sunday school. However, it is a psychological form of hell. If you fit in with this incredibly sick, inverted, filthy culture. So the truth is, the horrors of war, the horrors of mind control, trauma-based abuse is provable. But grifters and narcissists constantly use overt lies, otherwise called unfalsifiable statements, to manipulate you into silence or compliance, to terrify, coerce, convince in this paper thin, black hole version of reason where, because you can't prove them wrong, they get to control the argument, they get to control the narrative, and if you're gullible and naive, they get to control your mind because you couldn't prove them wrong. So they silenced you and they controlled you and they manipulated you with full bullshit. And because you didn't realize this overt and obvious manipulation tactic, because you couldn't contradict it, they got the upper end, they got the argument, they silenced you, they controlled you. And so from now to this point to the rest of your life, remember, don't be controlled and manipulated and coerced by this filthy tactic. Because as long as you allow them to do it, unfalsifiable statements will keep you in the dark lair of the sickness of new cage grifters and narcissistic abusers. Remember, if they tell you something that cannot be proven, it's a grand way to shut you up or to get you to comply, and you don't have to. You just need to notice when they're using this tactic to control and manipulate.